Welcome to Session 5 of Coping with COVID-19 for Parents. And Diane and I are here. I'm Gerry Vassar, President and CEO of Lakeside.
Hi, I'm Diane Wagenhals, and I'm the Program Director for Lakeside Global Institute.
And we're sitting in our administration center, as I've said before, kind of socially distanced and an empty building because we run schools and our schools are closed. But what we know is that many parents are at home, and we're sort of in lockdown mode with our children, with our kids, and that causes a lot of intense relationship, a lot of stressors, things that kind of we're not used to since we're used to them being in school and we're at work, and some of us are working while trying to help our kids get through their online schools that are out there. At least in our state, that's what's going on all over the state. So one of the issues that comes up, and we've been discussing all kinds of stressors and conflicts and things that go on with our kids, is the fact that we're in this place where behavior keeps on going that we don't believe is appropriate. And hitting and arguing and conflict and name-calling and temper tantrums,
breaking things,
and sometimes a little deceit, and those kinds of things are affecting our relationships. And of course, what's a parent to do? What do you do when this keeps on going and it's constant and you're frustrated and you're wanting your children to be able to handle some of these things a bit better or a lot better, and they are out of control? And we'd all like to think that our children were never out of control. I always said before I had kids, if anybody's kids, if my kids ever did that, I would.
Right.
And then I'm realizing my kids are doing the same thing.
It's very humbling.
It's very humbling to be a parent. So I think that we learn humility if nothing else. But Diane, I think this idea of discipline is often misunderstood. We try to discipline in some of the ways that we were disciplined.
Yep.
And many of us had very harsh forms of discipline. Some of us had no discipline at all.
Right.
So we want to find good balance and give our parents some good perspective and some good ideas about discipline, so that when we're administering discipline in our homes, it actually is having the effect that we're looking for. Right. So give us some thoughts about disciplining children.
Sure.
And what you think is appropriate and how we do that in a situation where things are so intense and it keeps on repeating itself.
Yeah, I was surprised when I became a parent. It was easier to nurture my children than to do this whole discipline thing. And trying to just be nice and kind and trying to engage them through pleading with them to stop doing what they're doing didn't work. And I was fortunate enough at the time, had a course taught by Mel Silberman at Temple University, and it gave me the insights that I then went on to pass on to other parents. And there's many other wonderful resources for parents, but we have this sense of what our long-range goals are, but the big question is, how do we meet those goals in day-to-day living? And in thinking about that, it's kind of having a philosophy of discipline that guides you in those day-by-day interactions, especially now when you're stressed out as a parent. It's really good to have this operating philosophy that you go by that has at its heart that kids are worth it and that you don't want to do damage. And at the same time, you don't want to be a jellyfish parent, you don't want to be a brick wall parent. You want to be that authoritarian parent, not the authoritative. No, got that wrong. You want to be the authoritative parent. One of the ways you remember that, by the way, is authoritative rhymes with creative, and authoritarian rhymes with barbarian. Not that they're exactly that, but that's one of the ways because those two words are
so close
to each other.
Right.
Nothing matches with jellyfish, just goes on its own. But if you're really saying, so how do you discipline in an authoritative way where you are not hurting children in the process? One of the things that's an interesting conversation is to consider the difference between punishment and consequences. And consequences is a big piece of discipline. Discipline comes from the origins of discipleship. It's being a disciple or a teacher for your children. Punishment is about retribution, about somehow hurting children somehow through the pain of being hurt and shamed and humiliated and banished and all the things people that happen to children when they're punished, as the thought is that you won't do it again because you're afraid of that punishment. But you're not really teaching, other than teaching kids to become deceptive or scared of their parents in not a healthy way. So learning about discipline, and it's not interchangeable with punishment. Punishment is what you want to avoid. And of course, that's hard too, because a lot of us were punished a lot as kids. So we're coming up on some of the reasons why this is really hard to do. And punishment gets kind of instant results because kids often go to the floor. And when you discipline effectively, you're building in things that will over time influence the character of a child in a good way. One of the lessons that I learned from Mel Silberman was the 3 C's of effective disciplining, which is that you need to learn how to be calm, clear, and confident. Kids will pick up when a parent can remain in this calm place, even if they're falling apart. If we escalate, start screaming ourselves and all of that, we're so dysregulated, and it just starts a whole downhill slide of who's going to yell louder and who's going to melt down and cry. You want it to be a non-emotional event. When you decide you put on that discipline hat, it is a time to be very calm, very clear about your expectations, and confident that you have the right to set those. Another piece of it is to know when kids, and we can talk at another time about family rules, but when kids break rules, when kids hurt somebody, it's really important to say, we can have a timeout right now. Not because I'm punishing you, but we have to stop. All privileges stop. All screen time stops. All snacks that are, treats stop. Everything stops until this is examined and we come up with something we're going to do to make amends, to say what went wrong and how can I help you and who got hurt, and then come back into a space of saying, how are you going to make amends if somebody got hurt? And we have people here at Lakeside who were taught this from the time their kids were little, and after a while their kids look at each other and go, you have to make amends to me, you hurt me, as a way of recognizing how important that is in the whole discipline. So disciplining, I think, requires a kind of a mindset that says, I will do no harm, but I will be able to be firm and fair. So it's kind of a report card, 3 C's and a couple of F's. Calm, clear, confident, fair, and firm. So
I think one of the things that's interesting is that we're looking for ideas when we're trying to give consequences, because most of us kind of don't know the difference.
Yeah.
Because I might think of a consequence as a punishment or a punishment as a consequence.
Right.
What do you think is the fine line and difference between the two?
Because kids will say, that hurts me, you're hurting my feelings.
Right.
And it's really, here's the 3 little words that are a major part of disciplining.
Yes. Go
and
ahead.
You know them too. I can see that in your eyes.
There we go.
That may be. When kids argue with you or they say you're hurting me or there's a problem or something like that, you can, in a calm way, you can consider it. Maybe you slipped into punishment. But if you're confident that, no, you set a limit, you set a boundary. The kids, a child crossed that boundary, and now they're arguing with you, to kind of shrug your shoulders and go, well, that may be. But it's not fair. So-and-so did that yesterday, and you didn't yell at him. That may be, and this is not a yelling voice. I'm not yelling at you. But the rule is, and that's another 3 words you need to have. The rule is, and the consequence for that is. And saying it calmly and expect kids to break the rules. That's what kids do. Remember how they lie? They lack judgment. They're impulsive. They're egocentric. They're going to break rules all the time. And you are coming in not so much to be the police officer that's going to cause them to feel ashamed or scared. They may be afraid because they don't like the consequence, but that's a different kind of afraid. So, get it.
Great. Thank you, Diane. That's a great posture, a great perspective for us to have as we come into the idea of discipline when we see all this outrageous behavior.
And it's really hard. You have to think about it ahead of time.
Right.
Sometimes parents make little note cards with some of these words on it to help
Right,
them.
to help remind you.
Yeah, and especially when you're in the middle of all of this that's going on, this is extra hard.
So maybe another part of this is to talk about what are the right kind of rules to have
That's a great thing to talk
in
about.
your house. So that we'll try to hit on that the next topic in our next session. But for now, we'll end this session. And thank you so much for joining us for our Coping with COVID-19 series for parents.